So we all know the reason that we pick exhaust is for the sound. But how do you pick the right one? And why are there so many different price points from $700 to $1,500, $2,500, $7,000, $15,000? There's all kind of price points. Today I'm going to talk about the differences of the exhaust, the materials especially that they're using. So let's jump into it. Hey guys, and welcome back to another Talking Mods. So as I said in the intro, it is very difficult to figure out the right exhaust for you. And I think this is going to be an interesting topic because when we browse, especially you guys browse onto a website and you see different exhausts, oftentimes it's overlooked. And you look into the specifics, it'll say like, for example, stainless steel 304, or it might say aluminum. All these are different. I'm going to go into all the different ones that are out there. If you're wondering where this is coming from, I'm the CEO of Mod Bargains, and I have had the pleasure of visiting a lot of these manufacturers, communicating, talking, learning about a lot of these different materials. And I'll be talking about aluminum, for example, aluminum exhausts, stainless steel, the different versions of stainless steel exhausts, titanium, Inconel, and I'm going to throw in a bonus one that you probably have not heard of, and is kind of on the up and coming. Now, if you already know everything about these materials and you just want to go to the bonus, then stick around or go all the way to the end and you can go check out the bonus one that I don't think anyone has ever really gone into or described, but I will go into it today. Okay, guys, I appreciate you guys watching this video. I want to see your comments below. I'm sure there's going to be some different opinions. There's a lot that goes into an exhaust, so and it affects your vehicle. So obviously sound, the type of engineering, how they're welding it and so forth. But really today what I'm going to go is into the materials. It's the easiest way to explain the different price points and why and how you should select your exhaust accordingly. So let's jump into aluminum. So we're starting off at the bottom of the materials, and the most inexpensive exhaust, that's going to be with aluminum. And honestly, you don't really see too many aluminum exhausts out there. It's kind of a rare situation because most manufacturers are going to make it in stainless steel, your OEM one, but there is a case for aluminum out there. So the main price point is really between the $600 to $700 range, sometimes even less, but let's say $600 to $700 range. You see this with companies called like MBRP. They make a great, additional horsepower that can be utilized by your vehicle, but at a nice price point. And then you ask the question of what's the pros and cons and why come out at this price point? Well, because not everybody can afford an expensive exhaust. If you want to get an exhaust at an affordable price point, aluminum is going to be the way to go. It will have a slightly different type of sound. It's something that I now I'm thinking about as I'm saying this, but there are a lot of other more important pros and cons, and I'm going to go specifically right into that right away. So weight wise, it's not incredibly heavy. It's just slightly heavier than stainless steel, and everything I'm going to say is going to be in metric, and we'll convert that over to Fahrenheit, pounds, and so forth for you guys. The lifespan is really where the issues kind of come in with aluminum. Aluminum is great in dry climates. Let's say you live in Nevada, Arizona, where you're not getting salt on the roads. You're not getting snow, difficult conditions, right? If you're getting difficult conditions like where salted road and corrosion can happen, then typical aluminum lifespan before we start having breakdowns and issues, rusting, and all these kind of situations is going to be between 2 and 3 years. On the average, though, if you were within a dry, arid environment, you could get it up to about 10 years as long as it's well maintained. You're not driving it in areas with salt and very high humidity and so forth. The other area of all this, and that's a very key factor here with all these materials, is what's called the breaking down point temperature. Now, you can melt any of these materials, right, at a certain super high temperature, but by breaking down, what I'm referring to is this is the the area in which this temperature will slowly break down the materials over time, right? So for the temperature specifically for aluminum, we're talking here within 600 Celsius. So 112 Fahrenheit, again, we'll put all this information down, but 600 Celsius. Now let's put that into terms for a vehicle. So the average car vehicle is going to be between about 315 Celsius to about 515 Celsius. Now that temperature could actually increase dramatically. The longer it's out on the road, the harder it's being pushed, the more horsepower it has. But I'm just using the average vehicle. Let's just say a Toyota Camry that's driving out there for about 15 to 20 minutes. Now let's say it's a higher performance vehicle. That temperature will increase over time and it will get hotter and hotter. So aluminum at a 600 Celsius has a breaking down temperature. Now, this is important because a race car, a car that goes on the autocross or a car that's built purposely for racing or has a vehicle that has a lot of horsepower, is going to have a temperature between 870 Celsius to let's say about 950 Celsius. And even that could even still climb higher, but that's going to be the average temperature that it's going to be hitting at its really high points during its when all the load is on there. So that brings us into the next point, which is stainless steel. And stainless steel is really what you see on your car when it came out of the factory. And it's typically, in the 400 series level. But when we go into car modification and we buy an aftermarket exhaust, typically what you'll end up finding is the 304. And the 304 stainless steel is actually a really great one. It's being used by companies like Borla, Magnaflow, Remus on most of their exhausts. Why? Because it has more chromium in it. And why put more chromium into the steel? Well, because it is more rust proof. Again, more resistant to the elements. Comparing now this to aluminum, it's going to be way more resistant to rust because aluminum will definitely rust. But the major difference here is that it's going to last a lot longer. Now, the average lifespan of the aluminum was 3 to 5. Stainless steel's average lifespan is going to be between 8 to 10 years, but realistically, 10 plus. Some people say lifetime, 20 years, lifetime of the vehicle. Stainless steel will last a good amount of time, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So there are some myths now that I want to debunk on stainless steel. One of the biggest myths is that they will not stain. That is definitely not true. All stainless steel can stain. So get that out of your head. It doesn't make a difference. Now I want to go into the weight. It is slightly better than aluminum. It's good. It's what we use. And on a 3-inch level, we're talking about 2.26 kilogram. So again, small negligible difference than the aluminum. But the major point is really the breaking down temperature. So for most stainless steel, we'll just say the average is about 860 Celsius. That is a major jump. We're talking about 260 Celsius. This is the difference of handling the high load for most race cars. That's why it's used by most cars. And its price point is incremental. So instead of it being, let's say, the $700 price point you would get with aluminum, we're looking at the average exhaust being around $1,200 to $1,500, sometimes a little more. Again, this now becomes where the difference in branding, the type of welding, the type of technology, the sound levels, the warranties that come with the exhausts out there and so forth. But just understand that what you're getting with the stainless steel is a product that's going to last a lot longer, and it's really a sweet spot. And that's why you see almost every single exhaust manufacturer come out with a stainless steel. Almost. There are some that only want to go after the higher end and some that only want to go over the lower end. But stainless steel is really the de facto sweet spot, best value you can get. So pros and cons there is that you do have some weight. Now in racing in particular, you want to reduce that weight. And that brings me to the next one. That's titanium. Titanium is really where it becomes fun. It's like that exhaust it becomes like that jewelry, and it's almost like a jewelry piece, right? Because it is so much more interesting for a lot of people, especially when you hold it. It is that light. It almost feels like, especially when you're holding stainless steel to a titanium, it feels like a huge difference. So the same thing happens with titanium. It's at least 40% lighter than stainless steel. And I've seen it even less than that sometimes. But if we go back to our example of the 3-inch piping, we're probably looking at about 1.28 kilograms. Again, comparing that to the stainless steel, that's a huge difference. But why? Why not just only use that? Why not use that material? Well, there's a lot of factors that come in with titanium, and let's discuss it, because that's the big pro. The big pro is, especially if you're racing, you want to go less and less weight. And the less weight you have, the faster your vehicle is going to get, right? So in titanium specifically, we have different levels of grades. And titanium has, again, that breaking point. And this is where it becomes really interesting. So titanium, in general, will have a breakdown of about 400 Celsius. Pretty good and used often. But if you have a titanium at that grade level, what you'll end up seeing is that it won't last very long at all. So it's used a lot by race teams because they'll use it for one season, a season being, 2 quarters of the year, one summer, or maybe even one full year. If they'll go that far, they'll obviously have to inspect it. But by the end of the year of running a titanium exhaust, you'll typically see a lot of stress fractures and it becoming extremely brittle. So they toss it and it's done. It's no good anymore. And oftentimes when you see these titanium exhausts, they'll typically be around $4,000 or so out in the marketplace. But what you'll have to notice is they'll usually have a warranty period for 1 year, because they know that after 1 year, it's going to break down. So let me go into something else on titanium that makes it even more interesting. A brand like Akrapovic, who has their own foundry and has worked on making titanium better. And this is better in the sense of also being used in terms of racing. So besides titanium also having this really cool blue color, if you didn't know, if you heat up titanium, so it turns into this nice, almost like this baby blue color, especially you see this on the tips where the flames come out of it. If the heat, it'll basically turn it into that nice blue color. Akrapovic was able to raise that temperature from 400 to about 750 Celsius. This is a dramatic difference. So how do they do it? Well, that is because they're able to control everything. They have their own foundry. They melt it down. They put a lot of different materials. They have their own labs, and this is where all that R&D goes into. That's the price point. Why is this important? Because if you did buy one of these, like more high-end exhausts, I know it's going to cost about, let's just say, starting point around $7,000-8,000. If you were to go resell it after a season, or you were going to take it off your car, that's fine. You could easily, somebody else can reuse it, and it can still be used for a very long period of time. So even though it's 750 Celsius, they don't break down as easily, which is nice, and it makes it into a nice sweet spot. But again, you got to pay to play, especially for this. So you get something, there is quality there, and you do get something amazing out of titanium. So if the price point is right. Now that's not for everybody, but now you can understand the differences and why the price points jump. So there's a titanium within, the $3,000 to $4,000 budget. Expect it to not last very long at all. I recommend staying away from it unless, again, you're just trying to win one season, I guess, or if you want to, if you're going to go for titanium and you're willing to spend for that, spend the $7,000-8,000 on a quality brand like from Akrapovic or Remus, because that's going to last you about 5+ years or so. Again, on talking about like racing level conditions. Now that's great for a race car. Again, race cars, are within that price point. What happens though when we go into Formula One? Formula One vehicles run at a much, much higher temperature, average 1,000 Celsius and above. So there needed to be another solution. And it is available on, modern day cars, but now we're going into a whole new price point, $15,000 and above. Inconel. So Inconel, if you haven't heard of it, is nickel chromium. And it's a nickel chromium base type of metal that's being used for exhaust. Now, this one can go into a much, much higher realm. Again, Formula One cars being around 1100 Celsius. Inconel can handle that at a breaking point of, again, about 1200 Celsius on Inconel. So it can handle it. It's a lot more resistant. It's amazing, actually, in terms of resistance. to the elements, lifespan. The lifespan of that is a lifetime, because I can't, with the ability to resist corrosion and all that, it's just incredible. It's even being used right now on certain vehicles. Besides Formula One, it's going to be used on like the DTM races. It's going to be used on the 488 pista. So if you own a Ferrari 488 pista, you actually have Inconel. Don't remove it. You don't need a better exhaust than that, in my opinion, unless you like the last one that I'm about to say. Or if you have a Porsche Singer, they're also using Inconel. But the price point is dramatic, and it's really designed for true racing, race teams, and it's going to be between 15,000 and above. Why? Because in order to manufacture this exhaust, it's actually really, really difficult. Very, very few companies can produce Inconel level exhaust at the right way. Companies like Remus can definitely do it, but not many can. Even working with titanium properly is a very difficult thing to do. And that's where the price points jumps up. It's not just the material, it's also how do you work with this material. So it's an interesting situation. What about the weight, right? You might ask, well, titanium brought the weight down. There's more weight in it. So it's just slightly heavier. It's still less than stainless, so it's going to outperform it. But again, when you're racing and you need that level of temperature and being able to handle it, Inconel is the way to go. So again, we'll use our 3-inch example, and we're looking at 1.4 kilograms. So slightly more than titanium, but you've got the advantages now of the breaking down point, and well, if you can afford it, it's incredible for racing. Well, I just had to fix this as we were filming it because it started drooping. I guess Akrapovic didn't like what I was saying about Inconel because they're all about being lightweight, but they have something up their sleeve actually, and that's the bonus. So if you waited all the way through, this is the bonus one. This is like crazy material. I think spending $15,000 on exhaust and above is already crazy, but this one is incredible. What's it called? Ceramic matrix. It is not carbon based, it is ceramic based. There is carbon in it, but it is incredibly lightweight, and it can handle the temperatures. So we got the best of everything, well, almost everything. So, and I'll get to what's the price point, which is really not where everything's at. So in terms of temperature points, when I saw I actually got to hold it and see the Akrapovic one. In terms of temperature points, they said 1000 Celsius. I actually know that it hit 1250 Celsius before hitting breaking point. So it can definitely handle Formula One, which I know Formula One's looking at this. And I can't imagine it on a space shuttle. But when I held it, it felt like nothing there. Now, keep in mind, when I held aluminum, it felt like, when you hold when you hold the titanium, you know that it is super lightweight. This is about 50% less, if not more. So for sure, it's 50% less than titanium. Mind-blowing. It feels like nothing is there. And it's just crazy. The problem is, though, it is incredibly expensive. For, let's say, that 3-inch version of it, and they basically used it in making. Akrapovic actually released it for the 911 GT3 RS. They basically released a couple small pieces for the tips, just the tips made out. So if you can find someone who has one, it's pretty rare because they only released 25 of them and they sold out within 10 minutes. But just for those tips, so close to that 3-inch, whatever, the cost was $25,000. Just for a piece about this big. I can't imagine what a full exhaust system would cost or how much it would cost to build a full space shuttle out of this material. But really crazy. $25,000 for a piece this big. Hopefully economies of scale and it gets used more and we can actually see this application come out in the future across, because I think it'd be really cool. That was your guys' bonus one. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this topic because I obviously do. I love when we get to see technology and how it changes the car scene, modifications, and how it moves things forward. I'd love to see your comments below. And guys, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It just helps us grow this channel. And guys, I will see you on the next Talking Mods.